Marie Antoinette. Did some research on it, and specifically propaganda revolving around her, of the printed variety, pamphlets, leaflets, stories, pictures, anything really. And what I found is that pamphlets were wildly successful in just making her seem like the worst of the worst, and that is largely due to the fact that 2/3 of the population couldn't read. And so when you can't read, you got pictures, and pictures are truth to people who can't read otherwise, which is wild because that's what you have now with Facebook and literally any social media. How does that start? So the French Revolution, starts in 1774, and King Louis XVI is just, he's not doing his job. People are fucking starving, and nobody's happy. And a couple years later, the people get the freedom of press. So they can say, do whatever they want about the king and queen, and there's not a fucking thing they can do about it. And that's not to say, though, that these types of, or that propaganda rather, wasn't, around. They just had to be hush about it. The only difference is that you could draw a picture of Marie Antoinette having lesbian affairs with literally anybody, and most people would believe it. So that happened very quickly, and it's called political pornography now. And there was so much of it that I think she is considered to be the most depicted figure when it comes to political pornography. It's happened to figures in multiple countries, Queen Victoria, basically any in power, they're gonna get shit on. And so that just really fascinated me. I love media now, so it's interesting to see what that was back then, basically. So at first, though, when Marie Antoinette first got married to King Louis, she wasn't really hated at all. People were kind of just indifferent to her because they were kids. She was about 12 or 13, and he wasn't much older. And so at first it was just really kind of whatever, there was distrust because, of course, she's from Vienna, she's a foreigner being queen. So if anything, the early conspiracies about her were about, overthrowing France, infiltrating on behalf of Vienna and her brothers and whatnot. But, as history shows, that wasn't true. Nothing ever came of that. But what did end up happening was that there's a period where she doesn't have a kid right away once they are king and queen, and as in any type of traditional setting, if you're not having kids right away, there's something wrong. You got to produce those heirs. And so that initially sparked rumors of King Louis's impotence, which is often depicted but not quite as harshly as literally anything else, considering Marie Antoinette, draw him with a little limp dick sometimes. All that did was kind of fuel those rumors until you start getting to a period of 5 years, 6 years, up to 10 years where there's no kids being had. Then people start thinking, well, maybe it's her, maybe she's actually just a lesbian and it's all her fault. And because she's a lesbian, she's, degrading the king and he's impotent because of that. So that's what then starts to spark a lot of these pornographic images of Marie Antoinette in threesomes, with women, men. They're cited in the photos as being these high-ranking political figures, foreign dignitaries, often religious figures. Cardinals are said to have spent nights with her. But again, it's largely all just bullshit because it's just propaganda. And again, in a world where you can't fact check anything like that, most people would believe it. The royal dildo. I cannot pronounce it in French. I will not try to. But that is the most famous written propaganda account of Marie Antoinette and, again, her alleged just group of women friends having some sexual fun that women were not allowed to have back then. God forbid a woman gets off in any form. What made this one so popular and so believable is, despite the pamphlets having very detailed and explicit photos, the royal dildo has a introduction that is claimed to be from a guard of Marie Antoinette. And the introduction basically says that one night this man was given this book, and he was told that he needed to tell the public to get it published to the masses, lest he and his family be fucking murdered. So of course you're gonna do what they say, you know, I don't want to die, not for this asshole. So they, you know, allegedly they go and publish it, and inside is an account of Marie Antoinette using a dildo, you know, something that, you know, I think literally almost every person is aware of what a dildo is, who uses them, what they use them for. I mean, shit, everybody uses them now. But of course, back then, you know, that goes against, I don't know, modesty, Christianity, all sorts of weird shit. So it's really funny though if you read it, because whoever wrote that didn't know how to like properly use swearing, or the way they did back then is just funny, because like the insertion of fuck is just really like, it's really awkward, but it goes into like some really graphic detail of what she's doing, how she's using it, you know, instances of her cunt throbbing. And so again, because you have this introduction that is allegedly from a source that was life or death, people really took that one and ran with it, and they said, well, look, why would somebody lie about that, you know? And so that one really took off. The pictures though were really popular among everybody, and I haven't found any instances of like confirmed like statements, but there's no way that some people weren't just jerking it to jerk it to those. Like, I know a lot of people were probably just like hate buying them. They were looking at them and being like, yeah, see, proof, she's a fucking monster. But then there's some people who are probably just like, dude, she's hot, let's fucking do it. I guess that's the interesting thing about political pornography, is it's not meant to be erotic. It's not meant to bring the viewer pleasure. It's meant to degrade and show, you know, like, oh, act out of turn, and this is what's gonna happen. You know, whether these actions are real or fake, like, people are gonna try to knock you down a peg or two. And again, I mentioned Facebook earlier. Photoshopping and deepfakes are literally no different than what this is going on. It's just the technology is more believable for us. You know, 100 years from now, someone might look at deepfakes and be like, how the fuck did you idiots fall for that? Much like we look at hand-drawn photos and go, how the fuck did you fall for that? A lot of what goes into this propaganda relating to her is its ignorance, and it's wanting to place the blame on somebody. And absolutely, you should blame her and the king for the terrible conditions that France was in. You know, people are starving, there's no food, and they're up there wearing big fucking goofy wigs and doing God knows what. So then you get to 1792, which is the end of the French Revolution. And it's the end because they finally get the king and queen. They storm the castle. They say, you're fucked, King Louis. We're going to eat you now. There's no more cake. We're going to eat you. And a year later, in 1793, they execute him on the guillotine, you know, the famous revolutionary guillotine that everybody wants to talk about when times get crazy. But what I don't think is also, again, not talked about enough, is how Marie Antoinette was held in prison for at least another year, 2 years, and they gave her a trial, and they drew out her death. And you're like, why the fuck would they do that? You know, like, they hate her, kill her. It's because they hate her, because that's the nature of misogyny, is not to just kill somebody, but to just fucking annihilate them. So they put her in jail, and by just the nature of being in jail, she starts to look like a normal person, right? You don't have the fineries of the royal family or anything like that, so, you know, you start to look a little crazy. You know, anybody who doesn't have their normal you know, routine, they're gonna look a little wild. So that's step one of just tearing apart this person, is making her kind of uncomfortable in that situation. And it's a, you know, it's like an appearance thing, right? They want her to look like a piece of shit. And additionally, there's instances too where, you know, she's in there for a year plus. The guards, they kind of take pleasure in the fact that, like, when she has a period, they're not going to help her with it. So you can imagine how uncomfortable that might be. Second is the trial. So they're going to take everything they've ever said about her, true or false, and they're going to just master blast that to the public. We're holding a public trial. We're going to talk about your infidelity, how you cheated on the king, how You and your sisters have had incestuous relationships with your son, which was one claim that was unfounded. I couldn't not find any other source that mentioned that, so it's like one crazy like gutter newspaper that claimed that one. And you know, the public spectacle of it all is again, that's the second nail in the coffin there. The third one is you wheel her out in a fucking cart in front of everybody, which I think is typical of public executions. But just the timing of it and how everything was so drawn out, I thought was fascinating, because it's 0 to 100 for the king, right? Take out the king because he's got the power. Men have the power. The queen, who's gonna protect her now? Nobody. So you can fuck with her all day, every day. And then they finally kill her, and that's kind of where my research ends. But it doesn't necessarily stop with her, because this can be found in, again, most instances of historical figures, mostly women, from her time up until now. You know, it doesn't matter where it is, either. Political, entertainment, successful women get shit on, whether they deserve it or not.
I wonder if she's still as stunning.